Welcome back to the Adam Schefter podcast as we get ready for a historic Week 11 and all the matchups ahead. We're going to have that and more on the weekly six-pack with Ty Schmit of the Pat McAfee Show. We're going to be joined today by the Vikings' second-year defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, who has helped lead that team to a 7-2 start, and his defense currently leads the NFL with 20 takeaways. But before we get to Brian Flores, we first get to Ty Schmit and the weekly six-pack.
Appreciate it, Shefty. Another great weekend. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're already going into Week 11. This season has just flown by so quick. And you mentioned it. Let's jump right in. Let's get to topic number one of the six-pack. We have some historic upcoming matchups this weekend that are going to decide divisional races, playoff seeding, all that kind of stuff. We have a great weekend in store for us.
Well, can you believe this? This upcoming week is the first time in NFL history that we've had 3 games that feature 6 teams that have at least 7 wins. So let me just repeat that. Week 11 games between 7-win teams. Thursday night, Commanders, Eagles, followed up on Sunday by Ravens, Steelers, and then the game that's being broadcast to 100% of the country, the Chiefs and the Bills. Would it surprise you if we saw any of these matchups again in the postseason? No. The Commanders have been one of the surprise stories of the season. The Eagles are a team we expected to be great. The Ravens are just great every single year. The Steelers are great every year, but they're even better this year than a lot of people expected. The Chiefs are the Chiefs going for the three-peat, and the Buffalo Bills have come on recently to become the Buffalo Bills, right? So really the only surprise in this group is the Washington Commanders. And we haven't had a chance to see Jaden Daniels in prime time the way we will this week on Thursday night. And we're used to on Thursday nights getting the Jets and the Texans, or we're used to getting matchups like that. You could hear last Thursday night when Al Michaels previewed this game, you could hear how excited he was about this matchup. Usually you can sense some of the sarcasm. Oh, next week we got the Jaguars and Titans. We'll be in Nashville for that one. And then he's like, look at this one that we have next week. We have the Commanders and the Eagles. And again, you don't get matchups, a group of matchups like this late in the season. Typically, it's the first time in history it's happened, and that means we could sit back and enjoy some great football, Ty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one to complain about any of these Thursday night games because soon enough here we're, going to have a Thursday night where there's nothing on and we're going to be clawing for, like you said, Titans and
watching the Housewives in Utah instead, right? Like, not what I want to do.
Exactly. But what a bonus. I mean, look, if you would have looked at the schedule before the season, seeing Eagles Commanders, I think that's kind of just one you throw away. It's like, oh, okay, this is another typical Thursday night, but incredible that game has ended up being what it is. And then these other 2 games too. Yeah. I mean, we could be potentially seeing 2 different AFC championship, previews.
And that's the funny part of these matchups, right? Like if you had said to all the networks, hey, would you rather have in August Commanders, Eagles, or Cowboys, Texans? You'd be like, Cowboys, Texans. We got the Cowboys, Texans on Monday night, and I'm looking forward to that matchup. It'll be a good game for a lot of different reasons, but it's not Commanders, Eagles this week. And you could just never know how the NFL schedule goes. These networks, every network, meets with the NFL before the season to present the teams that they want to broadcast and the games that they'd like to have. And nobody was pushing for the Commanders and Eagles.
No. How could you have known? But that's why the NFL is great. That's why they play the games every Sunday. You mentioned Houston, the Texans there, Shefty. Let's move to topic number 2. Yeah. What a crazy game that was this past weekend between Houston and Detroit. Unbelievable that Houston lost that game, forcing as many turnovers as they did. But they did. What does that win ultimately say about the Lions, you think?
Well, to me, when you go on the road and you throw 5 interceptions, 5, and you're down double digits against a good Houston team and still find a way to win with one game-tying field goal just creeping in the right upright and the game-winning field goal just creeping in the left upright. Like, boy, it sure looks like your season. Would you be surprised right now, Ty, if I said the Detroit Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl? No, right? They have looked like the best team in the league this season. They have outscored the Chiefs' higher points per game average. They have a greater point differential than the Chiefs. They added Zadarius Smith, who I expect to make his Lions debut this upcoming weekend after last weekend. And that was a little oddity, too, because they trade for him from Cleveland, and Cleveland was having its bye weekend. The Lions already had their bye weekend. So Zadarius Smith gets traded to Detroit. So if he had played Sunday night, that would have meant that he would have become one of the rare players who plays an 18-game regular season. So the Lions are able to say, you know what, we're getting him acclimated to our scheme, our system. He's not quite ready yet. We're going to hold him out of this game. But the truth of the matter is, why should any player have to play an extra game when he's contracted to play in 17 games? But they get Zadarius Smith back, and they've looked like the best team. And when you can win in an environment like that, it is incredible. And I thought of this also yesterday. I posted Dan Campbell's victory speech on my Instagram and Twitter account, as I do each week after they win, because the Lions social media team does this. You know who I got to get? You know who I have to get as a guest on this podcast?
Who's
the
that?
person who puts together those Lions videos of Dan Campbell in the locker room. The person who's there taping that moment live and then editing it down to post on social media. Because every week when I post, I look forward to posting that video every single week, because Dan Campbell, I could watch and sit and listen to him talk and give those post-game speeches over and over and over again. The guy has so much energy. He is just so authentic and genuine. I love those. Every time the Lions win, I'm thinking, okay, another Dan Campbell social media post. So to me, they've been the best team in football. They continue to be the best team in football. And when you win a game on the road against a good team throwing 5 interceptions, that tells me that you are going to be right there in the end. We'll see if it goes their way or not, but they're going to be right there in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think we throw around the, team of destiny term quite a bit every year. It's all, and you can come up with whatever reason you want. This is a team of destiny. This is a team of destiny. It certainly feels that way with the Lions. I mean, they had no business winning that game. None. You throw 5 picks, their offense they couldn't get anything going. And then all of a sudden you knew, when the Texans started kicking field goals and not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, it's like, hey, don't let this team hang around. And then, we had that cool moment where right to start the second half, they're talking to Dan Campbell, and it's like, hey, I just told the guys we need to get a turnover. We just need to get a turnover and turn this thing around. And then boom, instantly they get an interception. It's like, all right, here we go. This is the Lions we've come to know.
That was unbelievable how that happened. They have Melissa Stark talking to him. It was an incredible moment, and it was almost like he called his shot. And I always lean back on my experiences covering the Denver Broncos for almost 16 years. And I remember they had a big playoff loss in a year where they dominated to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and everybody talked about how much they learned from that experience. I almost feel like it's similar with Detroit and what the Lions went through last year, getting to the playoffs, going to the NFC Championship game, being on the brink of beating the 49ers to get to the franchise's first Super Bowl, and then losing the game with some crazy plays, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling, and the pass bouncing off the helmet that goes to Brandon Ayuk. It just feels like they've learned, they've paid their dues, and they are ready.
Yep, I agree. You mentioned Denver there, Shefty. Let's move to topic number 3. Heartbreaking loss for the Broncos this weekend against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They're unbeaten, whether they look good or not. They're still unbeaten. But do you think they are better than the Lions at this point?
No, I don't right now. I think the Lions hold the title for the best team in football. But I always think it's great to have an unbeaten in the NFL as long and as late as you can have it. And when the Chiefs broke through the line and blocked that Will Lutz field goal from the Broncos last week, and it kept alive their streak. And I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep it alive. It's great theater, great drama to just track that team every week. Denver took it to Kansas City. Denver was really physical and surprisingly played right with the Chiefs, had a chance to win the game. Sean Payton, after the game, talked about how the game unfolded just the way the Broncos talked about and planned, with Denver having the ball at the end with a chance to win the game on a field goal. You have a reliable field goal kicker. You have one of the great special teams coaches in Mike Westhoff in NFL history. And somehow that kick gets blocked, which, again, is what great teams do. They find a way to win. But Denver has to be sick, because if the Broncos had just found a way to win that game, it would have been such a confidence booster, and it would have ended the Chiefs season. But the unbeaten season goes on. The Chiefs continue to go on. I still think they're the best team in the AFC right now. I know Baltimore's played well. I know Buffalo's coming on. I know there are other teams that could be threats, but the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. And when the money is on the line in January, is there anybody else that you'd want back there other than Patrick Mahomes? No, right?
No. Yeah, I subscribe to until someone beats them in the playoffs, all bets are off. Because for whatever reason, we've seen them this year. I mean, you stack them up to some of these other teams. Like, if you just looked at it with the eye test, it'd be like, oh, well, the Chiefs are 6-3 or 6-4 or whatever the case may be. Like, they just win, and it's because Mahomes and Andy Reid and Kelsey in money time, like, those guys they're inevitable.
You know what? I grew up watching the most clutch quarterback that I ever saw, Roger Staubach of the Dallas Cowboys. He was incredible. I remember as a kid putting on CBS in the late window, and I swear to you that if I watched 100 Cowboy games in which they trailed in the fourth quarter, he was 100 for 100 in bringing the team from behind. That's what I remember about my childhood, that Roger Staubach always got it done when the game was on the line. And then I got to cover John Elway, and he did the same thing. And then Tom Brady rose to prominence doing the same thing. And I feel like Mahomes is at that point and level as well, that that when he gets the ball in the fourth quarter, he's just not going to be denied. He's not going to be stopped. He's going to find a way to win. And that's what makes the Chiefs such a formidable threat, despite the fact that they have not played as well this season so far as the Detroit Lions.
And the other teams in the NFL know. I mean, look at Baker Mayfield's body language, a couple weeks ago when the Chiefs are getting the ball first in overtime. He's like, oh, okay, well, it's over. So wish we would have won the toss. But let's move to topic number 4, Shefty. So much going on in Chicago. I believe you mentioned it last Monday on the Pat McAfee Show. You basically said, in terms of Eberflus, like, hey, if they don't either beat the Patriots or, look okay in doing so, like, that situation is going to get really hot. What happens with the Bears, do you think?
Well, we are recording this Tuesday morning at roughly 8:30 a.m. And on Monday, Matt Eberflus talked about making changes. Look, they have to do something. They haven't scored an offensive touchdown in 2 straight games. The people in the city feel like they want to take over the franchise. They're all angry and hot and bothered, as they should be. We've seen the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, regressing. He's not getting better. He's getting worse. And we're watching Jaden Daniels get better, and we're watching Drake May get better, and we're watching Bo Nix get better, but we're not watching the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, get better. Now, I don't know that Caleb Williams is in the building every morning at 5:30 in the morning the way that Jaden Daniels is, but he doesn't have to be. He's that talented. You also have right now organization that's trying to figure out who's going to call the plays. Again, we have not heard official word as we record this. My guess is that Thomas Brown will take over as the play caller, that they'll change things up there, because they cannot leave things status quo. They have to do something. That franchise looks lost right now. And the amazing thing is, and I said this on the Pat McAfee Show on Monday, is they show these sideline shots of Caleb Williams right now. And when I see him on those shots, he looks overwhelmed. He looks like he is basically not enjoying the situation. And not only that, it looks a lot like Bryce Young looked early in the year before he was benched. I remember the first weekend, the Panthers were getting blown out in New Orleans, and they show these shots of Bryce Young on the sideline. I'm like, he looks like he's not going to make it right now. And the ultra uber talented Caleb Williams kind of looks that way right now as well. It looks like he is overwhelmed. And so we'll see how they handle it, but I think that they changed up the play calling responsibilities this weekend, and they better start showing some improvement, or those fans are going to want even more changes, which they already do.
And that's what's tough is, hey, you can fire Shane Waldron, you can fire Matt Eberflus, but it's like this. It's an organizational thing. I mean, we're the same thing that is happening with Caleb Williams right now is what happened to Justin Fields. It's what happened to Mitch Trubisky. I mean, if they do fire both those guys, then he's gonna have another offense 2 years in the NFL with another offense and another head coach, and it seems like the cycle just repeats itself. I think part of it too was Bears fans and the media as a whole, going into the season, hyped up the Bears way too much. Say, hey, this team could,
Well,
maybe be a threat to win this division when it's like, all right, this is still the NFL. This is still a rookie quarterback. They still have a lot of holes on that roster.
and we saw them on Hard Knocks, and we saw them practicing against themselves, throwing against airing, and watching Caleb Williams
Yeah.
launch some throws. You're like, what arm talent, which he does have. That's undeniable. And you're thinking, practice. Well, somebody's always going to look good in practice, right? And they just looked amazing. You got to know their stories and hear them as people and see how empathetic and caring the general manager Ryan Poles was. And so you're rooting for them and you're thinking this is going to go great. Have we ever seen a team on Hard Knocks and thought, boy, this team's going to struggle? No. You
Never.
always watch them and you say this team's going to come out guns blazing. And in this particular case, it didn't work out the way that Bears fans wanted. And what's also amazing is that the season right now turned around on the Hail Mary. They've lost 3 straight games since then. At that point in time, they were 4-2. 4-2. They give up the Hail Mary. They're 4-3. They lose the next week. They lose the next week. It was almost as if one play just turned around their season, and now they're going the wrong way.
And on the flip side of that, one win could probably turn around their entire season because if they beat the Packers on Sunday, I think, that place won't seem like it's burning down like it is right now. I mean, having lost 10 straight or whatever it is. So they have an opportunity on Sunday for sure.
But if the Packers get out early in Chicago, the fans are going to turn real quick. And it's going to be an ugly scene. So if Green Bay scores the first touchdown on Sunday, watch out for Bears.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Shefty, let's go to topic number 5 from a team that everyone was talking about in the Bears in the preseason and, before the season started, to a team that no one is really still talking about, who is quietly one of the better teams in the NFL. What do you think of the Cardinals?
Let me tell you something. Incredible to watch what's going on there. And if you watch some of the videos of Kyler Murray in the offseason, you could see that it looked like he had kind of rededicated himself. And he's played very well. And when you look at this team right now, Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, has the defense playing at a different level. For the 3rd straight home game, the Cardinals did not allow a touchdown. We were talking about the Bears. Well, they didn't allow a touchdown against the Chargers a few weeks ago, the Bears, and the Jets. That's 3 straight home games that the Cardinals defense has not allowed a touchdown. The last time that happened was almost 100 years ago in 1926. So when you're talking about that happening, something is going right. And I will also say this. On this podcast last year, we had on the offensive coordinator, Drew Petzing, and he was very, very impressive. And I know that Cliff Kingsbury got an awful lot out of Kyler Murray. But it looks like right now, Drew Petzing is maximizing his abilities. And that offense has stepped up, and the Cardinals are playing well. And they have a chance to win that division, which would be pretty cool to see if they could ultimately do that. But in Arizona right now, they are very, very impressive. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, Kyler Murray obviously is unbelievable. I mean, the unsung hero, James Conner, is just as good as he was the week before, week in, week out. He's an absolute beast. And I think I want to say it was Darius Butler mentioned this on Pat's show last year, who, it's like when you watch the tape, I mean, we remember what everyone was saying about the Cardinals last year going into the season, especially, post Kyler getting hurt. But he was like, if you put on that tape, like they play very hard and very physical. Like, so whatever Gannon's message is, like, these guys are buying in. It's getting through, and just seeing him at the podium and everything. And I just, it's refreshing because I feel like last year everyone thought, okay, this is going to be the same thing. Gannon's going to get in there. He had the shots explosive thing where, everyone was kind of, making shit of him on social media. And then now you look at him and it's like, hey, this team, they probably are the best team in the NFC West. Now, obviously McCaffrey's coming back, but don't sleep on the Cardinals. That's for sure.
Oh, they've been impressive, and I think they have a real chance to win that division, and we'll see how that one works out.
All right, Shefty, let's move from the Cardinals and a quarterback situation that seems set in stone to the sixth and final topic of the six pack. After just a dismal performance in Munich, in Germany, what's going to happen with the Giants QB decision?
Listen, we've heard over and over, Brian Daboll has said Daniel Jones is a starting quarterback. In fact, it always seems to happen when we're doing our Monday spots on the Pat McAfee Show. It's happened 2-3 times this year, right? Where Pat's like, what's that? What's that? And I go, Daniel Jones is staying as the starting quarterback with the Giants. That's happened multiple times this year.
Yes, it has.
Well, on Monday this week, for the very first time, Brian Daboll said, we're evaluating everything. He did not stick behind Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback. And so when that happens, the writing is on the wall. When that happens, you open the door. In my mind, it's very hard for him to come back after their bye this week or whenever they make a decision, publicly make a decision and state it and say, we're sticking with Daniel Jones as quarterback. Like, does anybody think that that's going to be the case this week? I don't. And when you open the door like that, you're going to go through the door. And it's hard for this team right now. They have the number one overall pick today. The Giants have the worst record in football. Not the Panthers, not the Jaguars, not the Titans. The Giants have the number one overall pick in football. And when you have the number one overall pick, all options are on the table. And you have a quarterback who's had knee and neck issues, injuries. So when you're in this spot, why would you put out a quarterback who has a $23 million injury guarantee that if he doesn't pass his physical in March, you owe him $23 million more in guarantee? You're not going to do it in this situation. The time has come. And so they say they're evaluating everything. I would expect at some point in time that they'll make that change and that Daniel Jones won't play another down for the New York Giants. That's what I would expect to happen. We'll see ultimately what they decide, but that certainly seems like it's the direction it's going, considering that they always stood behind Daniel Jones as the starting quarterback, and this is the first time that they didn't stand behind Daniel Jones as quarterback, and they're going into their bye week, and they have the worst record in football. So it's a tough time in New York for the Jets and the Giants, for both teams, but it has to go that way, right? Right, Ty?
Yeah, without a doubt. You got to cut bait now. I think you look at the Giants, too. I mean, in their 100th season, one of the most storied franchises in NFL, like, they're not trying to just make the playoffs. They're trying to win Super Bowls. And I think it's pretty evident at this point, hey, we tried. We gave this guy probably more starts than we should have. There's probably more tape out there. Like, they could have made this decision quite some time ago, but everyone talks about how loyal John Mara is, and they stuck with him. But yeah, you can't have a situation where he goes out there on Sunday and tears his ACL, and then you're on the hook for him next year. So it makes sense. If you have the number one pick, like, if there's ever a time to hit the reset button, it's right now.